In about a week's time, I'm going to be hosting some friends coming for an ops session on the new reimagined Stanton subdivision running through Fairview. In today's video, I'm preparing for that session by adding some ground signals. Yeah, right. So it's all very exciting. After a winter of thinking about how I wanted to redevelop some aspects of the concept behind Fairview and some work on tweaking various aspects of operations and things, I'm building towards a first ops session to test out some of the theories. Of course, that means that you have to take stock of the layout and just decide what elements need to be tweaked and improved before you even put the system to the test. So, one area in particular that I felt needed to be improved before I could hold an operating session with people who don't know the layout as well as I do, I guess, is to start to add some signals. Now, don't get me wrong, there's no way that I've got the time or in fact the knowledge just yet to put in enough signals across the whole layout to reflect proper prototypical practice. But at the very least, I thought that what I could do is add some little ground signals where the yard, or the lead to the yard at least, enters the main line. So at the minute that UP freight, which will come into play when I set things up for operations, that is sitting on the main line just ahead of the switch where the yard track joins it. So I've got these little, will that focus, these little ground signals, and the plan is to wire them in so that I can at least add a manual control to stop crews from entering the main line without permission from me when I am playing the role of the dispatcher. Perhaps if I just quickly show you the latest. Here we've got the wires now coming up from the switch and from the power source. Obviously you still got to solder those to the leads which feed into the signal itself. But if we just drop down, first of all you can see I've drilled out now the inset, which will allow for the switch to be set behind the main strip of wood there. And then even further down, this might get awfully dark. I don't know if you're going to be able to see all that well, but we've got, let's bring them into the light a little bit. Sorry, very jumpy here. We've got the Woodland Scenics feeder plug and cable here. That's routed both through a very simple two-way switch. There you can see it, which has got to be mounted onto a plate so that it's like that, just protruding slightly into the inset there, and obviously then the wires carrying on in the dark up to the signal itself. So it's almost all in place, just got to finish off the soldering. I'll be back in a while. Clearly elements of this has involved a lot of fiddly wiring, not necessarily something that's all that easy to capture on camera, But by the time I'd done all that and threaded various wires through, we get to the point where we've got something like this. First of all, a recessed toggle switch down in the fascia. Without getting too wobbly, just reach in, it does work honestly, flick it backwards and forwards, and then swing round here, and you can see that we have a default setting. Perhaps zoom in a little bit here. Yeah, that's better. So a default setting of red, flick the switch, and we have green to give crews on the yard lead clearance to move out onto the main. It's a fairly simple circuit in as much as it's just a couple of basic positive and negative wires going through to LEDs. Don't get me wrong, I still find it quite challenging, not least with the practical considerations of making sure that the right wires then go back to the switch at the fascia and so on. But one thing which I did decide to do to make life a little bit easier was base this off the Woodland Scenics just plug system, which I'm starting to use around the layout. I find that very simple with its idea of hubs that you can piggyback one hub off to the next. You can run it off a couple of 9-volt batteries or off mains. Just at the moment I'm going to do both in actual fact. And all I had to do was add in the additional wiring for the two-way switch to have the signal showing permanently green, or of course back to the default, which will be red. The switches themselves are not powered at the moment, and of course that would be even more logical to have a power switch where the signal automatically showed the right aspect based on the power coming to the switch, but that's perhaps for another day. For now at least, having these two switches in position just gives me that extra little bit of control in the operations session later on. So once I had everything wired up and tested to make sure that everything was working okay, the last little step was to print out some labels to make sure that train crews know what we're talking about when we're asking for permission to change a switch and turn a signal from red to green. Quite an important part of preparing everything for operations. And there we have it, everything installed, all the switches now operational, by which I mean the toggle switches that control the ground signals. We can get on with some operations, or at least there are a few other jobs I want to try and do in the next few days. But that's it for today's video. Thanks very much for stopping by. As I say, I think there'll be a couple of other quick videos in the next few days as I get ready, and then I hope to have some footage of the operations session itself. But for now, take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you again soon.